Super. Well, thank you, Jill, for asking me to talk to you today. It's the little thing we did every day with a positive attitude that has added up to a huge amount over a long period of time and has been life-changing for our son, Hughan. The main highlight of my talk is the importance of early diagnosis of deafness in a child, making them aware of sound, and our involvement at the Coral du Toit Centre in Cape Town. Before my talk, I thought I would share some statistics with you. So deafness is an unseen disability, and unless it's diagnosed early, it can dramatically impact on a child's development, their communication skills, and how they live their lives. On average, 1 to 2 babies per 1,000 are born with a permanent hearing loss in one or both ears. 90% of deaf children are born to hearing parents with no experience of deafness. And this is a huge challenge for the parents as they need guidance to deal with the deafness. And when a child's diagnosed, the parents are at a loss to know how to deal with it. A child has a will to learn a language up to the age of 2, and after that it becomes more difficult, just like learning a foreign language. In the UK and most developed countries, a baby can be screened for deafness using a monitor just a few hours after they are born. It takes a few minutes, it's very reliable, and it's not upsetting to the baby. These tests are not available in a lot of underdeveloped countries around the world, especially in remote areas. After 6 months, a child has to be sedated or given anesthetic for a hearing test so they can remain still for an auditory brainstem response test to be carried out. And Willem and I were faced with this dilemma with our younger son, Hughan, and I'll be telling you about this. So our story, I'll be talking about this region to give you a perspective of where we were living and the distance to Cape Town. So my parents moved to from England to live in Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, in 1954. And I was born and brought up in Bulawayo. Willem and I met and married in 1983, a year after my dear mum passed. In 1988, Willem and I were still living in Harare when our younger son Hughan was born. His brother Will was 2.5 years old at the time. There were no screening tests available in Harare, so Hughan was not screened for deafness at birth. 10 days after Hughan was born, we moved to live in Gaborone in Botswana, where Willem had been offered a contract. There were no specialists in Gaborone, so we had to travel to Johannesburg to see the pediatrician for appointments, which involved a 5-hour journey and crossing through a border post. At 9 months, at Hughan's health check with the pediatrician, he scratched the surface of the bed he was lying on, and with no response, he mentioned Hughan might have a hearing loss. How could this be? Hughan was often babbling away. So this is a short video taken of Hughan at 9 months.
The sound on this is not very good, so don't worry too much.
Don't worry too much. So it's just to give you an idea that he was chatting away. The specialist recommended I booked an appointment for him to see the nose and throat specialist, which I did straight afterwards. When I got back home to Gaborone, I decided to do my own little hearing test. So I got a wooden spoon and a pot, and I banged them as loud as I could behind Hughan's back, where he couldn't see me, and with no response, this confirmed to me that maybe he wasn't hearing us. Hughan was content to sit and play with things he could reach. To motivate him, I took it on myself to hold his little hands and to encourage him to walk and take an interest in the surroundings. I didn't want Hughan to fall behind his peers in his development. Friends used to often say to me, why couldn't I just sit? But motivating him felt like the right thing to do. For the next 5 months, I did many trips back and forth to Johannesburg with Hughan for appointments to see the ear, nose, and throat specialist and for him to have grommets fitted. Eventually, when Hughan was 14 months old, he was offered an auditory brainstem response test. For this, he was sedated, and once asleep, I took him into a darkened room. Electrodes were placed on different points of his head and linked up to a monitor. The test started, and before long, the sound being tested became louder and louder. And this made me tearful. And I can remember the nurse saying to me, "What gave you the impression Hughan couldn't hear?" But I just knew as his mum, he wasn't hearing sound. So this is a graph on the right showing different levels of hearing loss, and on the left, Hughan's hearing test results showing no response in either ear, and the graph to the side showing nothing on the graph. So diagnosing him profoundly deaf. The specialist explained that Hughan's hearing loss was caused by nerve damage, and there was no way of restoring it. What exactly did this mean? What was nerve damage? He suggested we went for a second opinion, which we did, and the specialist also confirmed Hughan profoundly deaf, but also told us Hughan would never benefit from wearing hearing aids and would need to rely on sign language to communicate for the rest of his life. Fortunately, we went back to our original specialist, who reassured us that Hughan could benefit from wearing hearing aids, and he should persevere wearing them, at least giving him a chance to hear. I can remember making a vow to myself that I was going to do everything in my power to teach Hughan to hear and talk, so that one day he would have the confidence to leave home and live a life on his own, not having to rely on us. Hughan was fitted with the most powerful Phonak hearing aids available when he was 14 months old. At the time, there were no home computers with internet to Google and search for answers, or mobile phones to communicate easily. Initially, we started a signing program, having to travel fortnightly to Johannesburg for lessons. We found out that sign language was not a universal language, but varied place to place, and this was a challenge for us. With no deaf community to turn to in Gaborone, we started searching for more answers. Because my dad was living in England, we made plans to travel there. I found to find out if the approach to deafness in children was more advanced there than in South Africa. Should we be moving to England? My dad booked an appointment for us to see one of the UK's leading ear, nose, and throat specialists in Harley Street, and also an audiologist. I travelled ahead of Willem with our two boys to attend these appointments and get our questions answered. A few days after arriving, my dad accompanied the boys and myself to London by train. He would look after Will while Hughan and I were with the specialist, so I could concentrate on what he had to say. Unfortunately, Hughan wasn't very well that day, but I was determined not to cancel our appointments. Because he was so poorly, the ear, nose, and throat specialist was unable to do a proper examination of him, so another appointment was made for the 22nd of December, the day Willem was due to arrive from Botswana. After that appointment, we saw the audiologist, and she confirmed that deaf children in England were also being taught sign language. She handed me some booklets of the latest information about deafness in children and a book for parents. On the 22nd of December, Hughan and I travelled by train from Cornwall to London and met up with Willem at Paddington Station, who'd just arrived from Gaborone with all of his luggage. We attended our appointment with the ear, nose, and throat specialist at Harley Street, who was able to do a proper examination of Hughan, and went through all our notes from the South African specialist, and he agreed with his diagnosis, confirming Hughan's hearing loss was caused by irreversible nerve damage in the inner ear. We should now come to terms with Hughan being deaf and teach him sign language. We went from there to see the audiologist for Willem to get his questions answered. With all the information we had learned that day, there was no need for us to move to England. Sign language seemed to be our only option. At 4 p.m. it was getting dark and Paddington Station was packed with Christmas shoppers all on their way home. Willem and I boarded the train, but had seats booked in different places on the carriageway. So Willem approached a lady sitting at a table on her own and asked if she minded if we joined her, and she was happy for us to do so. We got chatting with her for the next few hours. She told us that she'd just arrived from Australia and was on her way to visit her parents in Devon. We told her where we were from, why we had been to London, and about Hughan's hearing loss. And we couldn't believe it when she told us that she'd been to university with the audiologist we'd seen earlier, and started explaining to us that she was studying deafness in Australia, and all about a new device called the cochlear implant that was being pioneered there, explaining to us how it worked. It was still in its early stages of development, but the Australian device was ahead in its technology. How lucky were we? What were our chances of us boarding a train and sitting with someone who had so much knowledge about deafness? This felt like winning the lottery. The research being made seemed too far out of reach for us, as this technology was being developed in Australia and other countries around the world, but at least now we had a lot more of our questions answered. Returning back home to Gaborone, in the evenings, we used to record programs on our JVC recorder nightly that were being broadcast from South Africa. So we could watch whatever we'd recorded after the boys had gone to bed. One evening, we sat down to watch whatever we'd recorded and sat in silence while we watched a documentary about Helen Keller, who was deaf and blind. Unable to see or hear, she was frustrated and at times a violent child. It was amazing to find out that Helen learned her first word when she was 7 years old. Her teacher, Anne Sullivan, had been spelling the word water onto the palm of her hand daily, over and over, until eventually Helen realized what she was doing and what this meant. From that moment on, she began to learn quickly, putting her hand on Anne's mouth and on her throat to feel the vibration while she spoke. What she achieved in her life was remarkable and changed people's opinions of deaf people who had always been thought of as being deaf and dumb. Watching this documentary had a huge impact on me. It made me realize the work I needed to put in to teach Hughan his communication skills. It was a real inspiration for me never to give up. Hughan had his sight. We were only dealing with deafness. After having worn his powerful hearing aids for 4 months, Hughan was still not responding to sounds. Through friends, we came across a family living in Gaborone whose daughter was profoundly deaf, and she had successfully followed a program at the Coral du Toit Centre in Cape Town and encouraged us to take Hughan there. So in February 1990, we attended our first session at the Coral du Toit Centre on the grounds of Tygerberg Hospital, when Hughan was 18 months old. This is a picture of Hughan and I outside the residence block, where parents could stay with their child while attending classes at the centre. We learned that Professor Coral du Toit had taken deaf education to South Africa, and the center was named after him. He was inspired by Edith Vetnal, who was instrumental in putting hearing aids on deaf children at the start of the NHS in 1948. It was their belief that every child had some form of residual hearing. This meant the amount of functional, natural hearing a person still possesses, despite having been diagnosed with a permanent hearing loss. Early diagnosis of a child being deaf and then fitted with appropriate hearing aids were critical for them to follow this to be successful at following this speech-only program. The main emphasis to teach the deaf child to use their hearing equipment to recognize sound. This was called auditory training. We couldn't believe it when we also found out they were pioneering the cochlear implant and had already implanted 3 children with the Australian device. How incredible was this? Maybe the device we learnt about on the train wasn't so far out of reach at all. The centre was prepared to give Hughan a chance with the program, as he was quite old to be starting, but they needed us as his parents to give it our all. We would need to return to the centre every 3 months for 2 weeks at a time. We were introduced to Vanessa at Parent Guidance, now called Chat, who would always be our teacher, and we're still in contact with Vanessa to this day. Vanessa handed me a diary. I needed to write down what we were doing at home so she could track Hughan's progress between each visit. And I needed to bring the diary back with us each time we returned to the Coral to Toy Centre so she could write notes of each session we had with her. That way, we could use them as a reminder of what we needed to be working on at home in Gaborone between each visit. To this day, they continue to be an incredible reference as to how Hughan developed over the years. Vanessa also took a video recording of a session during each visit to keep Willem and Vil informed. To teach Hughan his lip reading and communication skills, we needed to start embracing these top tips. We always needed to face the light so Hughan could see our faces clearly. Get eye contact with him at eye level. Hold objects we were talking about next to our face. Talk about things he was interested in. For auditory training, this was very important. To utilize Hughan's residual hearing, he needed to develop his listening skills, making him aware of all sounds we could hear by pointing to our ear and then showing him what was making the sound, teaching him sound versus no sound when the sound stopped, refining sound like environmental, animal, speech sounds. We needed to talk clearly and in full short sentences, repeating the same words and short sentences as often as possible, encouraging him to copy words and turn taking. And what was important, we were never to use the words like it, there, them. We needed to name everything. Everything had a name. So we needed to constantly make Hughan aware of all the sounds we could hear, never missing a moment, embracing a new way of life and a way we spoke to each other. Vil, Hughan's older brother, was going to be one of Hughan's most important teachers, as he would spend a lot of time playing with him. We needed to include him in everything we were doing. We also needed to inform friends and family as to how we were communicating with Hughan. This was going to be a team effort if Hughan was going to be successful with the program. We were told Hughan would need to hear a word 20,000 times before he would have the inclination to repeat the word. We felt like we got nothing to lose by following the program, as we could always fall back on sign language. Returning home, I started making Hughan aware of all the sounds I could hear. After doing this for a short time, Hughan started pointing to his ear and recognizing sounds like the vacuum cleaner, the washing machine, the telephone ringing. At last, Hughan was responding to sounds. To encourage Hughan to interact with other children, I came across a preschool playgroup that met up 3 times a week that I could attend with him. These mornings soon became a highlight for him. I started doing my own little play sessions with Hughan at home, pushing the coffee table in front of the window where he sat on his chair with his back to the window, while I sat opposite him on the carpet facing the light at eye level, where he my face clearly. I chose activities he enjoyed doing that I could repeat the same words in short sentences over and over. And soon Hughan started trying to push the table into place by himself and getting his chair ready for his sessions. For the next 2 years, we traveled 6 more times to the centre. Hughan also struggled with his balance issues and walked for the first time when he was 20 months old. During our visits to the centre, he had sessions with the occupational and physiotherapists to help him with this. When Hughan was 3 years and 3 months old, he was unable to hear most speech sounds using his powerful hearing aids, and because of this, he was a candidate for the cochlear implant. This is a short video of Hughan taken when he was 3 years and 3 months during a session with Vanessa.
This is Hughan Pietersen, and this is their 7th visit to Together Rotary Centre. He is now 3 years and approximately 3 months. He's really making nice progress. He's learning 2 3 word utterances.
Take off the lid.
And today we're going to make some popcorn.
Put the lid on. On. Turn. Turn the lid. Turn. Popcorn, yes. Shake. Shake the bottle. Shake. You're shaking the bottle. Take off the lid. Take off the lid.
Okay. So at this point, we had to choose between a signing program or the cochlear implant. So, and because we had met the lady on the train and found out so much about the device, we chose the cochlear implant. So still knowing we could always fall back on sign language if we needed to. For him to have the implant, we had to now make plans to move to Cape Town and the enormous task of raising the money for the cochlear implant. At 3.5 years old, Hughan was the 10th child, the 34th person to receive the cochlear implant while it was being pioneered in Cape Town. And now this is a short video of Hughan having his cochlear implant equipment mapped and his reaction to hearing sounds for the first time.
Yes, there it is. It's on. Hughan. Hughan.
Okay. So we were told this was the day Hughan's ears were born. Moving into our new house in Cape Town, Hughan locked himself in the bathroom upstairs, unable to communicate with him. I frantically went to see a neighbor if they had a long ladder to access the top window, but with no luck, I went back upstairs, and to my amazement, Hughan had pushed the key under the door for me to let him out. This was a relief. So Hughan attended classes weekly at the Coral du Toit Centre, where he was taught to use his equipment. He also attended speech therapy classes where he was taught to use his tongue. We made this fun for him, massaging each other's cheeks, blowing up balloons, encouraging him to push his tongue on his toothbrush, blowing whistles, blowing on a straw, making bubbles in a drink, and many more. Teaching Hughan to use his tongue helped him with the clarity of his speech. Every Monday morning, the centre took the children on an outing. Then for the rest of the week, they would concentrate on the words they had learnt that day. On one occasion, they went to visit the optician. The optician used the puff in the air test machine to measure the pressures in each child's eyes. And Hughan's eye pressures were very high, which was noted as a concern. Up until now, Hughan had successfully followed the Coral to Toy program, and with financial challenges, we made plans to return to Zimbabwe. Hughan was 6 when we returned to Harare in 1994. He attended a little private school for children with English delays. In 1996, going through Hughan's school books from the Coral to Toy Centre, I found the notes from the outing he'd been on to the optician, and a glaucoma check had been recommended, something we never did. At a barbecue with friends, we met an optician who told us that glaucoma was was an eye disease that damages the optic nerve, usually found in elderly people, and explained that it could lead to blindness if untreated. An eye specialist in Harare measured Hughan's eye pressures at 34, normal being 10 to 21. This put him at risk of having already got damage to his optic nerve. He prescribed him with Betagan drops, a beta blocker used to lower high pressures inside the eyes, and warned us that it was quite a powerful drug, but he should remain on them. Wanting a second opinion, Willem and I decided that I should drive from Harare to Cape Town with Hughan and Will by myself to see the eye specialist at Tygerberg Hospital. This involved me driving 1,600 miles to Cape Town and crossing through a border post with 2 overnight stays in each direction. The eye specialist at Tygerberg Hospital wanted to operate on Hughan's eyes immediately, as he felt Hughan had already started losing his vision. This seemed risky, knowing Hughan had hearing challenges. We saw 2 more specialists, one in Johannesburg on my return trip home, who had a similar opinion to the specialist at Tygerberg Hospital, and another in Harare, who told us that if Hughan was his son, he would not operate, but rather use the drops first and see if this would reduce the pressures. With so many conflicting opinions and being unsure of what we should do, it was now time for us to move to England. Hughan was 9 years old when we arrived in England in August 97. Soon after arriving, my sister came across a newspaper article with about an eye surgeon in Cambridge who was pioneering a new eye drop called Lantanaprost, marketed as Zalatan, to reduce eye pressures, with the only known side effects causing the change in color to the iris and increasing eyelash length and thickness. Luckily, we managed to get an appointment with him to see the surgeon, who said that Hughan could benefit from these drops. So as soon as they became available, Hughan was prescribed them and remains on them ever since, also having his eyes monitored yearly for glaucoma. Getting Hughan started into school was a challenge, as he needed to be statemented, but after a few months was eventually accepted into mainstream with a classroom assistant. How could we thank the lady we'd met on the train all those years ago, and all she told us that day, and how it had impacted and influenced Hughan's life with his achievements? I needed to contact the audiologist we met in 1989 during our trip to England, who'd been to university with her. My dad always kept a diary, so I was able to give him, so he was able to give me the name of our ear, nose, and throat surgeon we saw in Hardy Street. Contacting him, he told me the sad news that the audiologist had passed. Not giving up, I wrote to a magazine editor of Drum, a newsy magazine published for people with cochlear implants. They were happy to publish an article to try and find her for us. I seem to have hit a brick wall. Luckily, Willem, being an accountant, always kept all the papers and documents, never throwing anything away. And one day, tidying up my sewing room, I found our itinerary, the train tickets, and a little pink piece of paper from the trip to England in 1989. It had a complete breakdown of our expenses listed in my dad's handwriting. Willem looked at the little pink piece of paper and spotted an Australian address with a name on it. He then said, "I wonder if this is the lady we met on the train." And I went and Googled the name Dr. Elaine Saunders, and I couldn't believe it, all that she'd achieved. So, and Elaine is on the Zoom meeting with us this evening. So how special is that? I found Elaine's email address and we made contact. I made contact with her and she confirmed she was the lady we met on the train. It was so wonderful to eventually thank Elaine for all she'd told us that day on the train and how it had influenced the outcome of Hughan's life and related it to just like winning the lottery. I wrote back to the Drum editor and informed them we'd found the lady we were looking for, and they then published a follow-up article. When Hughan was 25 in 2013, he decided to book a holiday to fly by himself to visit our family in Durban. He chose to fly Air Emirates with a stopover in Dubai before arriving in Durban. When making his booking, he requested assistance during the flight to prepare himself, and without us knowing, Hughan watched a documentary about Dubai Airport. So he knew exactly what he needed to do when he arrived there and how to catch his connecting flight. I accompanied Hughan to Heathrow Airport, and when it was time to check in, I was flabbergasted when he took himself off to the assistant's counter, explained his needs, taking full control of what he needed to do during the flight. And after saying our goodbyes, I went and sat down, taking in what had just happened. All those years ago, I'd made a vow to myself, and my wishes had come true. Hughan had achieved everything he needed to do in his life to enable him to do whatever he wanted to do, and this felt such an achievement. When Hughan was 30 in 2019, he was getting married in New Zealand. So he sent Elaine an invitation, and to our huge excitement, Elaine accepted. So before Elaine was due to arrive, I decided to do some research about her on Google and came across her book, a memoir of her career journey with hearing. So I ordered the book in Oamaru, and reading through the book, I couldn't believe it when we got to chapter 12, and it was called Just Like Winning the Lottery, which was dedicated to our story with Hughan, all about us meeting Elaine on the train and the email I had sent her in 2011. Elaine started our story by saying, "I'm sharing this with you because you never know when your one brick in the wall is an important one." And at the end of the story, she ended up by saying, "I'm so happy I helped, and I hope I'm always vigilant to opportunities." To get to us, Elaine had to fly from Melbourne to Christchurch in the South Island, and then catch a coach for 3 hours to get to Oamaru. How wonderful was this? It was truly wonderful being able to meet up with Elaine and thank her for the inspiration she provided us with to set us on as the successful path we've taken with Hughan. Also, a great opportunity for Hughan to meet Elaine and thank her in person. This is a short video taken on when Hughan was 34 years old in June 22, when he was working with the audiologist, and he was receiving an updated equipment, having a new mapping setting put on his equipment.
Normal and one direct and one the scan.
You want
Oh, Hughan's, hold on. Just hold on. We're trying to increase the volume.
Sorry.
Normal and one direct and one the scan.
you want a fixed directional one?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
So you can have just so if it's like you can have a bit of both, whatever it is.
Yeah. So 1 all around, 2 fixed front,
Yes.
3
It's
scan.
scan.
Yeah, sure. That's
Yeah.
fine. That's fine.
Because if somebody's talking to me outside, if it's windy and I can use the scan one, then it just helps it.
Yeah. I can't think of many occasions where you would use fixed directional over scan.
Okay.
The only thing. But there's no harm in
Normal.
Okay, so it's the little thing we did every day over a long period of time that has added up to a huge amount and has enabled Hughan to achieve so much with his hearing and speech that he can now even hold a conversation on a phone without using his lip reading skills. Following our success in teaching Hughan, I decided I want to help other parents with hearing impaired children through our experience. And in 2011, I became a Bristol Breakfast Rotary Club member after giving a presentation about being a mum of a deaf child and my passion to raise money to help deaf children in Africa. Growing up, my dad was a Rotarian in Bulawayo, so I had a fairly good insight into what Rotary was about. After becoming a member, I joined the International Committee, and David Gammon, one of our club's founder members, took me under his wing and encouraged me to get others on board with my passion, as I couldn't achieve what I wanted to do by myself. Wanting to do a project in Cape Town, I went onto the Rotary Club website and found the closest Rotary Club to the Coral du Toit Centre, which was Belleville Rotary Club. So I phoned the president, and that's how our partnership with Belleville came about. Bristol Breakfast Rotary Club have partnered with Belleville doing several projects at the Coral du Toit Centre, being the largest being sports facilities, where we partnered with 3 clubs in Bristol, 3 in Cape Town, a German club, an Australian club, to raise £11,000. These facilities have been very successful in helping the children with teamwork, communication, balance, and other skills. Our Bristol Breakfast Rotary Club, in conjunction with Belleville Rotary Club, are presently involved in a global grant project, raising money for early intervention and treatment of deaf children in Cape Town, the Western Cape province of South Africa, and beyond, of which I have been the UK lead. Our aim in UK has been to raise £30,000, which we have just achieved. This includes 100% matching from foundation and 80% matching from international. So to raise the money, I've done 9 presentations to different Rotary clubs. Willem and I have held a barbecue to raise money as well. And we have received a 5,000 donation from an organization called BrizDoc. This global grant project will have a huge impact on every child diagnosed and treated at the Chat Centre, which was formerly called Parent Guidance, and will be life-changing for those children. Being involved in all these projects at the Coral du Toit Centre has been my way of being able to pay back and thanking all the wonderful people that have helped us along the way. So I just wondered, Jill, is there time for us to show that short video of Patrick?
Yes, I think so, yeah. Go for it.
I'd like to share this video. It's a 15-year-old Patrick who lives in Uganda. And to give you an idea of what it would be like for a person who's never been taught sign language or had the opportunity to learn how to communicate. So a person who's very isolated. So this is Patrick learns sign language for the first time.
One of the great things about the story from my perspective was meeting two parents who have been so amazing and so wonderful in bringing up Hughan and all you've done and all you've done in the field of hearing outside of that. Real privilege to have met you both and become part of your life. I have been involved in hearing research and service in different ways in hearing since I was about 15, actually. When I did come to Australia to study and to research in cochlear implants, I'm still involved in hearing research. It's moving away now more into drugs, actually, therapeutics, where I'm involved both in the Barnex Institute in Melbourne and with another group called the Ear Science Institute of Australia, which is slightly inconveniently about 3,000 miles from where I live, the other side of Australia in Perth. That's Australia for you. I should say I bring you greetings from the Rotary Club of Wood End, which is District 9800,
Okay.
where we are doing some work in hearing. But I think most of all, Sue said it in her talk, to me, this is a real example of how, particularly as Rotarians, sometimes the little things we do that just seem right can actually have quite big implications. So we always just try and do what's right, I think. That's all I've tried to do, and I try and carry on working in this field and trying to make life a little better. But my congratulations to Sue and Willem, and my very, very warm greetings to you and your family.
Super.
That's it for me.
Hughan is here and he will actually speak to everyone if you'd like that. So we did ask him if he'd come and join us. So
Yeah.
just see if he is there. We did ask him. So Willem's just gone to see where he is, but he did say he'd come in and speak to everybody. So I'm sure he'll pop round. I don't know if anyone's got any questions.
Jill, if I could
Yes,
comment
please.
briefly, I think as Hughan's coming on, but just to say an overwhelming, not questions, but an overwhelming feeling from the audience of what a privilege, what a wonderful presentation. And people are saying they're in tears in such a good way to think how you've come together and achieved so much for Hughan and other children as well. Sue,
Yes.
This is what's so amazing. This chance counter on the train has been impactful for your wonderful son and for so many children. So kind of, as you can see, I'm very emotional myself as well.
Yeah. We are actually going to Cape Town on the 9th of April. Hughan and I are flying there for the opening of the chat centre and to be there for the official opening. So that's going to be super. So here's Hughan. I don't know.
Hello.
There's Elaine.
Yeah.
Hello, Hughan. Yes, you've seen Elaine. Elaine is here.
Yes, I can see. I can see everyone. I can see Elaine.
It's just it's been a very inspiring story that we've been hearing, Hughan. It's just amazing how you've learned so much. and this is your story. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think looking back at Hughan at that when he was 3 years and 3 months and playing with the popcorn and ever thinking that he could talk and yeah.
Yeah, it's been good.
Yeah. So I think Elizabeth, you've got a question. Do you want to press unmute? And yeah.
I just want to say I'm looking forward to seeing you, Hughan and Sue, when you get here next month. I will be seeing you, so that's fantastic news.
Super.
I will be going to the opening with them, which is special for me. And
Very
just to
nice.
also say that Bristol Rotary Club are amazing to me in the work that I do in the township as well. And they help me in so many ways. It's just unbelievable. I can't even start talking about it. You'll be here all night.
Thanks. Thanks.
The only thing I want to say is that I've just recently got a job that for Ocado in Bristol. And what I was saying is that it's been the first time I had a job that they have really looked after me as a deaf person. It's because the whole deaf community is they like the normal hearing people are also adapting to the deaf world because you get a few people who's been on TV like Rose that's doing all the like for the dementia people in the homes and so on and that sort of thing. So signing and things like that is coming on nicely. So like now my work has been amazing because they really adapt to my needs and everything. And they really communicate with me perfectly and it's been very helpful. It's just been, it's working is very challenging for me in the past, but this is like my very first time I've ever had a really good experience of having a job and they really, make sure that I was comfortable, make sure I was in a good environment, making sure I was up to date, and they keep checking on me. So that's very, very important. But yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, you were struggling to lip read the one manager, so they put something in place so that he, to help him with that communication. So
yeah.
Anyway, well done, Hughan.
Yeah, because it was their first time they've taken on a deaf person as a big company.
So it's part of Marks and Spencer's. It's Ocado. They've got about 500 robots, and Hughan helps with all the packing of getting ready, all the groceries ready, going out to the customers. So, but it's a huge organization where he is. And they interviewed him for about half an hour before employing him, which was really good, finding out exactly what needed to be in place.
Sue, I was wondering, do you think that it might be possible for Ocado to actually talk to us about what it is that they have done and what their access to work is and how they the adaptations that they make? I was wondering that might be something that others on this call might be interested in, and it's just something that struck me just now.
It's a private organisation, so Marks and Spencer's paid for a company to interview Hughan and made sure they had everything in place for all his needs, in the workplace. Because
it's not really Marks and Spencer's, it's Ocado.
It's Ocado,
yeah,
but it's all Marks and Spencer's grocery.
It's branded. Well, Ocado has their own brand, but they take on Marks and Spencer's as a secondary, whatever it is.
They do.
I don't know. But anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Super.
Thank you. So, are there any other questions?
No, there's no further questions, but just to say again, an overwhelming number of comments to say what a privilege it's been And a huge thank you, because it's left us all, I think, determined to do whatever we can, because you've definitely proved the links with Rotary, where there's a will, there's a way. And we are so in admiration of what you've done.
Super.
Jill, I think if I could say something to you and Andrew, I've always felt you was very special people too, for the work that you do and the way you've enabled this to happen. And things are not by chance, are they, Jill?
No.
You and I have proved that many, many times. And we're so grateful for all of you for coming along this evening, and hope you'll tell others about what we're trying to do together. And we hope you'll join us on the 26th of March, when we've got Tinnitus UK speakers coming along to talk to us. But personally, and I hope I echo everybody on screen this evening, I will never, ever forget this evening. It is a magic moment for every one of us.
Super. Well, we feel very privileged to have Elaine on this call. Thank you so much. I couldn't believe it when Elaine wrote in her book, when she came to us in Armory, I said, could she write in the inside of my book? And she said, thank you for inspiring me. And I was like, how have I inspired you? You've inspired us. So anyway, but such a treat. It's been a lovely evening for us too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank
Jill,
you.
over to you.
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you very much. And it just seems sad to close the meeting, but I'm going to close the meeting. And thank you to people that have joined us from Canada, from South Africa, Elaine from Australia, and it's just been quite overwhelming. So thank you.
From India.
Thanks,
and India.
Nakita, and India. Yes.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Great
Truly.
to see you, Pippi, Elizabeth. We are from the same club, E-Club. Great to see you all. Thank you so much for inviting me, Sue.
Okay, super. Thank you.
Bye-bye then. See you next time.
Okay, thanks so much. Thanks, Jill and Andrew. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks, Elaine.
Thank you. Thank you.